Hello, beautiful people. My name is Emma.
And I'm MC.
And we are your hosts of the gforcespodcast. So, we are getting ready for the one, the only Monaco Grand Prix.
Yay.
MC's least favorite race of the whole season.
Visually, I get it. I'll give it to the people. But it's so boring.
Race-wise, not the most entertaining. If you're new to the sport of F1, in today's regulation, it is not the most entertaining sport because not the most entertaining race, because you're racing through the old streets of Monaco. They're very narrow.
The cars are too big.
The cars are too big to be able to do some really great passes on the streets. We saw last year when a pass was attempted in the first lap. We saw Checo and the Haas's, and I think maybe a few others just get taken out by each other.
Well, the Alpines, weren't they just taking each other out last year?
Yeah, I think that almost happened as well. Mm-hmm. I think some of the better passing that can occur really is going to come on some of the straights that, like, we might not be able to visually see, like, in person. So, like, the tunnel, I feel like that could be a fun passing spot, but I just think it's a really difficult place to pass as a street track because of how large the cars are now.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those races without a doubt that everything matters in quali, and that's fine. It's just...
But, like, at the same time, 2 years ago, you had a crazy race where, like, Esteban Ocon was on the podium. So, last year was just, your classic modern Monaco of, like, not really any passing. Qualifying is what matters the most, and whoever qualifies in pole, unless some weird incident happens, they're most likely going to win, which is exactly what happened.
Yeah.
We did get a really amazing race last year of Charles Leclerc winning Monaco for the very first time.
Without a doubt.
Which was really awesome. Definitely brought a tear to everyone's eyes.
Yeah, I mean, just like the historical significance. I mean, some of the feats. I mean, I didn't realize up until today that there were, I believe, 5 Monegasque drivers for such a small corner of the world. It's a surprising amount of people. But the things that Charles Leclerc has been able to do just, like, culminated in that moment. And I think it was something that he really needed to, because I feel like he was just struggling.
Especially when it came to Monaco as well. Like, for years, he had the worst luck when it came to Monaco. Like, he would have a crash, or, like, he would have a poor qualifying, or just whatever. It just was never in his favor. But last year, it finally came together. And I feel like we had Lando's win last year, which was great. And, we had Max's win at the beginning, and we had some of Carlos's wins. But then it's kind of settled into Max winning a little bit more, and then we had Lando's win. And I feel like the real, like, oh, this is going to be a season for the books was Monaco, I feel like.
Yeah, it definitely, I think, shocked everyone that it happened. I mean, there
happened.
Yeah, there was the running joke of, like, the curse of Monaco.
Yeah.
And so I think it did shake up the season. It was that first moment where people were like, oh, it's not just going to be McLaren, Red Bull. So it also, I think, was a really shining moment for Ferrari, who I feel like have struggled for quite a bit of time.
Well, yeah, because I think that it was Charles, Oscar, Carlos to finish, I believe.
I really can't remember.
I think it was both.
I need to start looking at the past.
I think it was both Ferraris, and then Oscar was P2. I believe so. And so it was a very shining moment for Ferrari. And also all of the Monegasque people were very, very excited. I think the King of Monaco was more excited than Charles practically.
Yeah.
So that was very cool to see. So, because it's the Monaco Grand Prix, we have, every time I say Monaco Grand Prix, I think of that one TikTok audio where it's like, but it's the Grand Prix, and people...
David Tennant.
It's the Monaco Grand Prix.
It's the Grand Prix.
Also, actually, before I get into what we're doing today, just a reminder that also next weekend is this weekend, whatever timing it is, Indy 500. Indy 500 happens the same day as the Monaco Grand Prix, I believe, every single year. And so that's why we don't see F1 drivers racing Indy 500 anymore, like we used to way back when. But yeah, tune into that later on in the afternoon, because that's great. Hopefully, we won't see Pato get passed at the very end of the race again this year, and hopefully, we'll be able to see Pato win. Fingers crossed. So yeah, we have a little bit of history to go over, as we always do. MC, what are you doing?
I won't tell you the name just yet, but we're throwing it all the way back to pre-F1 days into F1, but we're going over the first ever Monegasque driver. So.
Cool. And I'm going over the 1963 Monaco Grand Prix. So, yeah, we'll get into it.
The driver of the week this week is Louis Chiron. Louis? I'm not really sure, but we're going to call him Louis.
I'm going by Louis because it's spelled like, people might cringe when I say this, but Louis Tomlinson.
Oh my god.
And so that's what I'm assuming it is.
Okay, so born Louis Alexander Chiron on August 3rd, 1899 in Monte Carlo, Monaco. Louis was Monaco's first ever F1 driver. Louis's father worked as a maitre d' at the Hôtel de Paris, which is still around, still there. You can spend a night there. It is, we will not be spending a night there. We'll have to take out a small home loan.
How bad was it?
For like 3 days, it was like almost 2,000
Oh my god.
American dollars. I'm also pretty sure from looking at 2 to 3 photos of the front of the building, I'm pretty sure that this was the hotel that was in that Selena Gomez movie.
Just Monte Carlo.
Monte Carlo,
yeah.
So, there's that.
Okay.
Louis himself would eventually work there as a bellboy, but with the rise of World War I, he volunteered in 1918 to serve in the artillery regiment. Now, remember, he's born in 1891. He probably couldn't join up until a certain point. And then additionally, I didn't know this, but reading up on him, as a Monaco citizen, he wasn't drafted because Monaco wasn't doing that. Only France was, and he wasn't required to be drafted by France because they're separate countries. And so he actually volunteered himself to, I guess, as they would say, fight the good fight. He would join the artillery regiment, and then he would eventually move in the army to become a driver for high-ranking generals. So, cars. With the conclusion of World War I, Louis went back to the hotel and started working as a dancing partner for the rich ladies, which, it's the 1920s, so think Great Gatsby, guys. People are partying, living their best life. They survived. So, he's just dancing the night away.
I love this for him.
Through this job, he became friends with a Bugatti dealership owner who owned a dealership in Nice. He started working as a driver, transporting, I believe, the cars from the factory to the dealership. So you just get to drive through France, driving Bugattis. I believe at this point he was also able to save up and buy one of like an older Bugatti and started to race in what were called mountain climbs. I couldn't figure out what this was, but I believe it's pretty self-explanatory. Like you're just driving in a car doing like crazy mountain passes. In 1927, Louis was able to drive for the Bugatti factory team and would drive for them until 1932. So at this point, F1 doesn't exist, but there are races going on. Motorsport's a thing. I mean, think horse racing. There's tracks. People are just doing any distance racing, track racing. There just wasn't like regulation, but there were automobile federations in most of these countries. like I said, he's a Bugatti factory driver, and his first GP win was at the Gran Premio de San Sebastian, Emma.
Amazing.
Thought you would love that one.
If you guys don't know, I don't know if you've ever said this, but San Sebastian is my favorite city. It's in Spain. It's in northern Spain, and it's in the Basque country, and it is one of my favorite cities in the entire world. So beautiful. 10 out of 10 recommend.
In 1929, according to F1 Forgotten Drivers, which has like a whole page on Louis was instrumental in establishing the Monaco Grand Prix. He was a well-known driver and a Monegasque, and his support was a helping factor, along with, I believe, the gentleman in charge of the Monaco Automobile Federation, as well as the King of Monaco. So they getting his sign off on it was a helping factor, which I thought was pretty cool, because it's without him,
this probably wouldn't exist.
Would we have what we have?
I don't know.
I'm sure it would have somehow.
There's enough money in Monaco, it would have happened.
Yeah. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to race in the debut Grand Prix. This is pre F1. As he was already signed up to compete in the Indy 500. From 1929 to 1931/32-ish, Louis had an incredible run winning races and being the runner-up in Monaco. Unfortunately, Louis had an affair with his sponsor's wife, so he was fired from his sponsorship and then fired from the Bugatti team in 1932. I'm also pretty sure that they have ties to the La Roche-Posay family, this sponsor, because they were his last name was Hoffman, and they were part of the La Roche pharmaceutical company.
What in the world?
So
I'm in shock.
The sponsor's wife, Alice Hoffman, had been an interpreter and a timekeeper for Mercedes-Benz at the time. She divorced her husband and began traveling with Louis. And just so you guys know, a big role of women early days in racing for quite a long time, and this is something that a lot of WAGs are attributed to in the 60s and 70s into the 80s, was timekeepers. So they would there's a few people that have done articles or short documentaries on them, but they would sit there and literally time each lap, because this is pre-digitization of timing, and so that's what she was doing. And then she got involved with Louis. Louis decided to create his own team at this point, since he didn't have anywhere to go since he'd been fired. And so for the 1933 season, him and his friend Rudolf Caracciola, I'm not sure, he's German, but that's not a very German last name in my opinion. Unfortunately, Rudolph ended up getting in a season-ending injury in the first race, so he ended up not driving with a team, but as a private driver. I'm talking about Louis. And mid-season, he was finally able to join Alfa Romeo. 1934 was his best season, with multiple wins and podiums, and in 1935, he would stay with Alfa Romeo. This was not a great season, with him then transferring to join his friend Rudolph at Mercedes. 1936 wasn't the best year for him, with a few retirements and crashes that left him pretty badly injured. Apparently, Rudolph also went and married Alice, which really pissed him off. I could not figure out more about this, and I was trying so hard, but I was like, man. Also,
that's crazy.
When you do look up Rudolph, there is Nazi ties. So he was a German driver for Mercedes-Benz.
In the 1930s.
In the 1930s.
A rich man at that time, I assume.
Yeah. I don't know. Everything I was reading was a quick thing on Wikipedia, so that's all I'll say on that. 1938 was his 7th entry into Le Mans, so he's also doing these crazy distance races while all this is going on, and I believe one of his last racing events for a while due to the Second World War. F1 Forgotten also stated that Louis would help downed pilots travel from neutral Switzerland. He would drive them through occupied France and through the Pyrenees to get back to England. Apparently there was also like an interaction in the late 40s between him and like another European driver where he like fully called them out for being a Nazi sympathizer. So
go off, Louis.
Louis was not a fan. After the war, Louis would drive for Talbot, and then F1 began. For the debut season, Louis was one of the drivers for Maserati, and he was on the podium of the debut Formula One Monaco Grand Prix, placing third that season.
That's awesome.
He would continue on for one more season and then make a record showing during the 1955 Monaco Grand Prix. He still holds the record for the oldest driver to start a Grand Prix. He was 55 years old and 292 days. He also did enter the 1958 Monaco Grand Prix, being the oldest driver to enter a Grand Prix. And unfortunately, he did not qualify, so he wasn't able to break his own record of starting a Grand Prix. I'm also pretty sure he was the last Monaco driver to podium and score points until Charles Leclerc in, I believe, 2017 or 2018. So quite a record that Charles shattered. After Louis' lengthy racing career, he would retire and focus on the organizing of the Monaco Grand Prix in an executive role, as well as focusing on the Monte Carlo rally race. Turn 13 is named after him, and there's a statue right on the water in memoriam of him. Louis Chiron died on June 22nd, 1979, at the age of 79. And that is Monaco's first F1 Grand Prix driver.
Honestly, I'm so glad that I suggested that you go over this guy.
Yeah, I thought it was cool, especially that Turn 13 is named after him. Like, that's probably something now I'll never forget. Like, I'll always remember what Turn 13 is named. And then just to, like, kind of see, you know, someone who didn't need to volunteer to fight in World War I and then to do something, hopefully not just supposedly, but, like, hopefully there's truth to it that, you know, he was doing these incredible things during World Wars, but also successful. Now, was he a party boy, you know, cheating with his sponsor's wife? Take that with what you will.
At the same time, it doesn't seem like Alice made the best decisions.
You know, he's not the first, and he's surely not the last F1 driver to be in a cheating scandal. So
No.
So, but, yeah. So.
Awesome. Well, I am going to get into the 1963 Monaco Grand Prix. This was actually the first year that the Monaco Grand Prix was beginning to be called the Grand Prix of Europe. Don't know why they needed to call it that when most of the Grand Prix in general are in Europe, in fact.
I remember that, like, having to do research in the past and having to be like, oh yeah, and this is the European Grand Prix, and it was so weird.
It made no sense to me. I think I said it in our last Get Ready episode, the European Grand Prix.
Yeah.
Anyways, it was also the first race of the season. Crazy for that to be the first race of the season. This actually discouraged some people to bring new cars. So I'm guessing the rules obviously have changed drastically since then, because imagine teams bringing the car that they ended last season to the first race of the next season. That would be crazy.
The team principles that would combust.
Yeah, so this actually discouraged some people to bring new cars because it's not exactly the place to be doing testing at, naturally, because you would just be doing testing into someone's home. Not really what you want to do. However, some new designs were entered, but actually none of them arrived in time, so the field was composed of cars already seen in racing. Lovely. The track is only 3.145 kilometers, so the Monaco circuit at this time was only permitted 16 starters. So the usual thing was to invite the major factory entries and then make up the remainder from those that are fastest during practice. There were some grumpy people this year because they decided that they were not going to just invite the factory teams, but instead they guaranteed spots on the grid to a few specific criteria drivers. So the 5 drivers that were invited were, the reason why was because it was any current world champion, so the world champion from the year before, any former world champions of F1, and then any past winners of the Monaco Grand Prix. There were only 5 drivers out of these criteria who decided that they were going to drive. Those drivers were Graham Hill, Phil Hill, what is it? And a couple others. Oh, McLaren. Yeah, a few others. I don't think Graham Hill had won this yet, so I don't really know why he was invited. Maybe, I don't know. He was he a world champion yet? I don't know. Anyways, this invitation would make sure that the 5 different cars had guaranteed a spot, but the Lotus, Climax, and then the Ferrari cars were going to have to compete for a spot during practice. Yeah. So Graham Hill and Jim Clark had actually dominated the end of the 1962 season. If you guys remember our very first episode that we ever did, we spoke about Jim Clark.
One of my favorite drivers.
Yeah. The timekeepers at Monaco decided to move the start-finish straight over to the inland straight up to the Santa Devote. I think that's how you say it. With the timing line moved to the exit of the Gasworks hairpin. I believe that that's the famous hairpin that we all know. This had previously been located in the braking zone for the hairpin, which is crazy to me, meaning really you had to be like a very brave driver to basically leave their braking until the very last second to set a better time. The move made the times more consistent now and more representative of the true pace of the drivers, making it more difficult for a driver to basically cheat their way to a better time. I don't know who decided that they were going to do a timing spot in a braking zone. That just seems illogical to me. Immediately during practice, Jim Clark beat his pole time from the year before, basically. Friday's practice times were now tumbling down to what they were the year before. And all of the leading contenders went out for the final few minutes of this practice session, with Hill, Ginther, Ireland, Surtees, fellow high school alum Dan Gurney, and Myrisi all going under 1 minute and 36 seconds. The year before, I believe the pole time was like 1:37 or something like that. By the time that Saturday rolled around, times were not going down anymore. Ferrari even had to repair the front wing of Surtees' car as he had hit the wall in the chicane. So when qualifying came around, the order ended up being, I only wrote down the top 6 because I'm not writing down all of them. Pole position was Jim Clark. P2 was Graham Hill. P3, John Surtees. P4, Richie Ginther. P5, Inez Ireland. And P6, Dan Gurney. Jim Clark obviously got pole position for this Monaco Grand Prix. When I say Hill throughout this race, I'm talking about Graham Hill. It's a little confusing because Graham Hill and Phil Hill were both on the grid at this point. Mm-hmm. So when I'm talking about Hill, I'm saying Graham Hill. I just don't know if I feel like saying Graham Hill every single damn time. So, race day. It was Sunday afternoon, as it always is, and Clark actually had quite the bad start. So he actually dropped behind Hill and Ginther. Hill and Ginther were both BRM racing, I believe. Yeah. So McLaren had a great start. McLaren, as in Bruce McLaren, not McLaren, the racing team. McLaren had a great start, jumping Ireland and Gurney, and the field ran nose to tail, basically, so car to car, for the opening 5 laps, with not one person attempting to make a move for fear of losing out of the rest. Like, basically, you're in a DRS train. It's really difficult to move. Clark was actually the only one who made attempts, though, but every time he got alongside Ginther through the middle of a corner, Ginther would then stamp on his throttle, basically, and just roar ahead, and so it was almost impossible for Clark to pass. On lap 5, though, Clark finally managed to take the position without losing out, and he was able to set a really frantic pace, basically, out of those leaders, seeing the top 9, though, pull away from the rest. After Clark passed Ginther, his goal was to pass Graham Hill, who was leading the race. So he was basically trying everything to do it. It was kind of like Max, like Oscar and Lando trying to pass Max, what was it, last weekend or whatever race? Miami, I think? One of the races this year. I don't know. Clark ended up doing this by lap 7. He took the lead. He did do a late dive. I believe it was into the hairpin. He did a late dive on the brakes, allowing Hill to get back, though, past as they blasted towards Santa Devote. Half a lap later, the move was repeated, and Clark snatched the inside for the station hairpin, only to run wide and allow Hill to flash back up the inside, with Ginther also sliding past. So it was a lot of just movement in the top three, trying to figure out who's going to get past and like what corner. It's crazy to see all this passing and battling in Monaco. Honestly, as I was reading through it, I'm like, never today would you see this.
It could never.
No,
happen.
The cars would not fit.
Yeah.
So by lap 10, also just a reminder, this is a 100-lap race.
Also, this is what, 1963?
Yeah.
So there's very little safety barriers.
This was actually the first year, I believe, that they decided to start testing out seatbelts.
Love that for them.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
How times have changed.
I know. And they also, in the 60s, finally required drivers to wear helmets. Because it wasn't required before. Love that. By lap 10, Clark was finally back ahead of Ginther and again trying to pass Hill. The rest of the top 9 were within striking distance, so like half of the field were, not more than half the field, they were all just together. And that's pretty typical what you'll see in Monaco. Everyone's just kind of up each other's asses for the whole race. Clark repeated his earlier attempt through the Gasworks hairpin, once again with an identical outcome. Although Hill was fortunate that Ginther was running in third this time, for his line into the final corner meant that he could be forced further wide if someone followed Clark through to prevent any more cars going through. While this was going on, Joe Siffert had connecting rod punch a hole through his engine, causing the Lotus BRM to dump most of its oil at the Gasworks hairpin and put the Swiss racer out, naturally. The oil slick was far enough off the racing line, though, that it didn't really cause any issues somehow. Don't know how. Hill and Clark were still going at it for the next couple of laps. Like, honestly, the next 10 plus laps, they were just going insane. Clark was finally able to get a strong enough exit to keep with Hill, as Hill stamped on the throttle again to complete lap 17. Then they ran side by side to Sante Devote, with Clark snatching the lead by holding the inside line through the narrow right side. The pair, they flashed past they were lapping Jack Brabham, rip, as they flew up the hill towards the casino. Clark was actually now in the lead, and he was setting lap after lap the fastest lap, now gaining a gap, basically, which is insane. A few laps later, Gurney was actually out of the race in the Brabham Climax, the car having suffered an engine problem. It's okay, fellow alum. It's fine. Well, Surtees began to attack Ginther. So Surtees was a Ferrari driver. McLaren was just a few yards back. It was not long. It didn't take long for Surtees to find a way past. But Ginther immediately was setting out. Oh my gosh. Yes, Ginther was trying to get after Hill ahead. No, Surtees. Oh my gosh. I just wrote the letter of their name. Oh my gosh. Okay. Surtees was setting out after Hill. And Ginther now was in the sights of McLaren. Yes. Okay. Surtees' attempts to pass were being hampered by the BRM of Hill ahead. Hill's car had developed also a slight oil leak, because everyone's having oil leaks this race, or just full-on oil everywhere. And actually this is kind of funny to me. Not funny, but not funny. So his car, because of the oil leak, was spraying like slight oil 24/7 onto Surtees' car and goggles. So Surtees was just getting oil all over his goggles, so he couldn't like see. Funny, but not funny.
It's like that Mario Kart.
Yeah.
That one the squid.
Exactly. So elsewhere in the race, it's really wild that there's so much going on in a Monaco Grand Prix. Joe Bonnier, I don't know what team he was on, was actually struggling because of a damaged clutch pedal. I don't know how they had so many problems with their cars. But also it's the 60s, so who knows. Maurice rolled into the pits with a dead engine, and Taylor, though, was making progress, battling his way past Mags for 7th, but he then inherited 6th as Ireland crashed out after a gearbox failure threw his car into the seawall. At least he didn't go into the harbor like Alberto Ascari.
Yep.
Clark was running now 7 seconds ahead of the field.
Jeez.
With his fuel was burning off at such a rate that the lap times were getting closer and closer to his qualifying pace in a race. The race was now at half distance, and Hill was still defending from Surtees with a 10-second gap back to the furious. A 10-second gap back to where Ginther and McLaren were furiously battling it out. Surtees was finally able to pass Hill, but because of the oil leak from Hill, he literally could not see, so he actually let Hill back past him because he couldn't see. Because then he was using Hill as like a guide, basically, of like, how do I get to the end of this, because I can't freaking see. Poor guy. Clark was now setting a record pace. He broke the record from his 1962 pace, and it was lap 57. With 3/4 of the race now run, Clark led Hill and Surtees. Gunther was running ahead of McLaren. I was going to say the McLaren. I keep catching myself. Ahead of McLaren. After the New Zealander opted to use the BRM as a tool to catch the pair ahead. So kind of like not DRS, but like kind of. Kind of like using...
Like a tow.
Yeah. For like a whole race, though. For a whole chunk of the race. A few moments later, though, this was completely changed because Hill was Hill was suddenly leading with Ginther, the McLaren, and then Surtees, and then Clark was entirely out. So Clark was now seen, but they shot the camera over to him. He was now seen getting out of his car. Basically, he had been messing with the gears a bit as he was driving, and that actually caused the gearbox to lock the rear axle through the gasworks hairpin on lap 79, and the Lotus refused to move again. He could not move the car.
Oh, no.
And it's, like, not exactly a spot you want to get stuck at. Yeah. If that were to happen today, either there would be a severe crash, like people would be crashing into it, or there would be a red flag because you could not get past that.
Yeah.
Good thing it didn't happen today. With the lead now in Hill's hands and Ginther just a fairway back, Hill wound up the pace and ended up breaking the lap record that Clark had set earlier in the race by 0.2 on lap 85. And now the final order of the top 5 of the race. P1 was Graham Hill, P2 Richie Ginther, P3 Bruce McLaren, P4 John Surtees, and P5 Tony Maggs. This was Graham Hill's first time winning Monaco, and he went on to win it another 4 more times. Jeez. When he ended up retiring and I believe passing away, if I'm correct, he still held the record for the most amount of times winning Monaco. The person who actually broke his record was the one and only Ayrton Senna, who's won it 6 times. And no one's ever come close since.
Wow.
Yeah.
Crazy.
It took a whole 20 years for this record.
Yeah.
Senna was racing in the 80s, 90s, so 20, 30 years for the record to be broken.
It makes me wonder, like, what records that are currently held by Lewis and Max are going to take, like, 20 years to break.
I mean, when we first started the podcast, when we went over Jim Clark, it was because the first race that we were getting ready for was Zandvoort, and Jim Clark still held a record at Zandvoort.
Yeah, I'll have to look up which one it was. I can't remember off the top of my head.
Yeah, neither can I. But that was the 1963 Monaco Grand Prix. Now we're going to get into our final thoughts. Final thoughts, MC.
Well, so for those that couldn't guess, we're pre-filming this because we're entering another triple header, which, did we have 2 triple headers this close last year?
I don't think so.
Like, I feel like it was a little bit more spread out, but long story short, they get very overwhelming and they happen very quickly, and we like to do 2 episodes a week, and so to accommodate Emma's life and editing skills, we're pre-filming. So I'm hopeful that no further drama, like, imploded between now and 2 weeks from now, or a week and a half from now. But it's F1, and for all I know, Ollie Oaks could be on the run, you know? Like,
Stop, that would be crazy.
It'd be insane.
The next time we hear from Ollie Oaks, he's in the Cayman Islands. At Flavio Briatore's place.
But, yeah, I mean, I think for the historical standpoint and what it means and just the, like, it is F1. Like, when you think about F1, you think about Monaco. So I will totally give it that it has the historical importance. I think, unfortunately, the cars have outgrown the circuit, you know?
It can be really hard with some of the historical tracks because you want to go to them because of how much they mean to the sport. But also, if the cars eventually get so big that they really can't race properly, I mean, we're getting there. I don't know what the new regulations, if there's any size changes.
I think there's a few, but not crazy size changes. And then the other thing is just, like, when will safety outweigh? You know, it's quite it's not up to regulations.
No, it's the only one. It's the only track that's not properly up to regulations.
Which is, like, I don't want to say fine, but yeah, it's a fine line. But I don't know. I'm curious. I don't know how long the contract is for it to be on the F1 season right now, but it has so much money and so much historical significance. I don't think they'll ever take it off.
The amount of money that gets pumped into F1 through the Monaco Grand Prix and just eyes on motorsport.
It's so funny, too, because I wonder if they would purposely never make the cars too big. Like, if the Monaco track is their, like, this is the limit we can push, and we can't push anymore.
Yeah. To be honest, it's a kind of track, though, that, like, I think if you're really rich and you have the ability to go watch a qualifying day, you go for the experience of, like, oh my gosh, I'm watching something at the Monaco Grand Prix. I think it's
probably so cool to be in that city with how tightly packed it is and to just hear the cars.
Oh, yeah.
Like, that must just be, and that's the thing. I think going there is probably insane, but it's like, this sounds terrible, and Dad will really like this, but it's like baseball. I'd rather pluck my eyeballs out with a spoon than watch baseball on television. But going to a baseball game, I love going to a baseball game. You want to, like, watch baseball in person. It's the environment. And I feel like for Monaco, like, it's the environment for me. Now, will I ever go? Probably not. I need to eat food. I need to afford my mortgage.
But at the same time, I wonder if it might be honestly like the perfect kind of race to go see in person, because for a race that's like, for one of the racetracks that are really great with passing and they really have an amazing show, to watch it in person where you get about 10 seconds maximum of seeing the cars in front of you and the rest you're seeing on a screen, I'd be kind of pissed off that I'm missing so much. Even though I'm seeing it in person, it's still like you're missing a lot of it.
Yeah.
Where, like, Monaco, it's kind of okay if you're missing a lot of it. It's
guaranteed, yeah.
Like, it's okay.
Yeah. I don't know.
And there's typically a lot of, with Miami, you have a lot of brands that are going there, with, like, influencers and stuff like this.
This is just money.
This is just money. They have, like, charity galas, and they have all of their fancy watch companies that sponsor them usually have some sort of events.
Of the brands are there. The brands aren't there. The families and the people that own the brands are there.
Yeah. We will forever remember Kimi Räikkönen crashing out and then going to his yacht and partying in the middle of the race.
Respect.
Honestly, go off. I wish I could do that. Anyways, I think that's everything for today. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, go do all of the things, and fingers crossed nothing blows up between now and when you're all watching us doing this episode.
Yeah.
So, bye guys.
Bye.